Hey y'all, my name's Amanda. Welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to show you how to do both the knit stitch and the purl stitch continental style, which is where you hold the yarn in your left hand as opposed to English knitting style where you hold the yarn in your right hand. So I'm not going to go into a tutorial about how to hold or tension your yarn for continental style knitting. I actually did a video on that already, and it showed you 3 different methods that you can try and see which one works for you. I will put a link to that in the description below and also here in the cards, and I'll link to that video at the end of this video as well. So we're going to assume you know how to tension your yarn and hold your yarn in your left hand, and to hold your needle in your left hand as well. We're just going to break down how to do the mechanics of the actual knit stitch and then also the purl stitch. So once you're holding your yarn, you want to insert your needle, and this is the same if you were doing English style knitting as well. You're just going to insert your needle into the loop of your first stitch that's on the needle. So same thing, you're just going to insert your needle there, so you can see what that looks like. I'm going through just this loop. I'm not going through these loops here, just that front loop. So you insert your needle there. And then as you can see, when I pull my needles apart a little bit, there's a gap. There's like a little hole that happens between the 2 needles. That is where we're going to pull our stitch through to do the knit stitch. You can see it's made like a little gap there. So I'm going to take my right needle, insert it, put the tip of the needle on the far side of the working yarn, farthest away from my body, and then tip it. Look at where the needle goes. It's going to go up and away from my body. I'm going to tip it, put it on the far side, tip it to pull that yarn through the little gap that I made by pulling the needles apart. I'm just going to pull that yarn through that gap and slide off the tip of the needle. And I'll do a few stitches slowly for you so you can see. So I'm going to insert my needle, make the little gap between the 2 needles, tip this right hand needle away from me with the tip of the needle behind the yarn on the far side away from my body, pull the yarn through that gap that I made, and slide it off the needle. Do it again. Insert, put your tip of your needle on the far side of the working yarn, tip the needle away from your body, pull the yarn through that gap that you made, and slide it off. So once you get going on this, it should be a smooth motion. You can go pretty quickly. I'm going slowly just so you can kind of see what it looks like, but you can go pretty quickly with continental knitting, especially compared to English style knitting. And as I'm sliding them off the needle, I'm using my right finger to sort of give me some leverage to slide it off, and then I'm also using the pointer finger on my right hand to hold the most recent stitch in place to give me the ability to move my needle without that stitch sliding around too much. So insert, I'm holding this last stitch here, go on the far side of the yarn, pull it through that little gap that you've made, use your pointer finger, slide it off, and then move it onto the stitch you just did. Insert your needle. I'm holding this last stitch I did. Needle on the far side. I've made that gap in between the needles. I'm going to use the tip of the needle to pull the yarn through that gap, slide it off, move my finger to the next stitch on the needle. I'm also keeping these stitches scooted down to the tip of my left needle. So the motion of your right hand is really just sort of tipping this needle back and forth to get the angle that you need. Insert, tip it, pull it through that gap you made, insert, tip it, pull it through the gap, and the last stitch, insert, tip it, pull it through the gap. So go back the other way and do some purl stitches. But I did want to mention, if you are a crocheter who is teaching yourself to knit, I know a lot of crocheters learn to knit continental style. I have a video that I did that is tips for crocheters who are learning to knit, and I will link that below and in the cards as well. I had a lot of trouble teaching myself to knit, even though I've been crocheting for a really long time. So hopefully you can kind of learn from some of the mistakes I made. So when you're doing purl stitches, you're going to go back the other way. On the first stitch, if the first stitch on your row is a purl stitch, you want to be careful because you're going to want to work into the stitch here, but when you go to tension your yarn, it pulls up the stitch from the 2 loops from below that stitch. So you can see we're going to want to work into this, but when I tension my yarn, you're seeing these 2 loops. So just for your first stitch, for your first stitch only, you're going to have to push down the yarn here to get to the stitch that you're going to purl. The mechanics of the stitch will be the same all the way down the row, but only for the first stitch you have to kind of push the yarn, and I'm just rocking these fingers forward. So holding the yarn tension between these 2 fingers, just rocking these fingers forward. I'm going to insert the needle purlwise, which means from right to left. Insert the needle. And again, watch where this needle goes. In purling, it's just basically going to stay almost at a 90-degree angle with your other needle. That's basically the motion that you're going to have for the needle that's in your right hand. You're just going to keep it at a right angle to this needle. So you're going to insert it, okay? And then you want to go, unlike the knit stitch where it was on the far side of this yarn, you want to go on the side of this yarn that is closest to your body. And you're going to push down. You can push with either your pointer finger, both fingers, and I've even seen some people use their thumb. But you just want to go on the closest side of that yarn. And just like with the purl, I'm pulling to make a gap. Let's see if I can get a good angle on that. I'm making a gap between the needles that I'm going to pull the yarn through. So I'm going to push it down and then just pull the yarn through that gap that I made. And then again, slide it off the tip of the needle and hold this stitch here. So for the next stitch, I'm not going to have to push the yarn down to get to just the loop. So I can just go straight ahead and insert. I've got the yarn on the front of the needle. And you can see I'm making a little bit of a gap there between the 2 needles. I'm going to go on the side of the yarn that is closest to my body. Tip forward, kind of pivoting. Tip forward. Pull through the back side and that gap that you made, and then slide the needle off. You want the yarn to be in the front. Insert your needle right to left. Put the tip of your right needle in front of your working yarn closest to your body. Tip downward, and you're going to pull, let's see if I can get an angle for you, pull that yarn through the gap that you made between the 2 needles. Insert, go on the closest side, tip it down, and pull through that gap. Insert, tip it down, and you can see I'm pulling it through the gap that I made there. And once you get going on this, you can go pretty quickly as well, just like with the knitting. I'm doing the same thing with my right hand, where I'm holding the stitch that I just did on the right hand needle to give me some ability to move the right needle more freely without the stitches sliding around. And the angle, watch the angle of my right hand needle as I do this. It's basically going in a 90-degree angle. And I'm not tipping it or anything when I come back through. I'm just pulling it straight down perpendicular to that needle. So insert, tip it, and then just pull it straight through. Insert, tip it, and this needle's just going to go straight back. Continue to the end of the row. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, I'd love it if you could give it a thumbs up and would consider subbing before you exit my channel. Thanks for sticking with me. Hope to see you next time. Bye.